Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to give you some insight on what to do to get to college through track. Our guest today is Joetta Clark Diggs, and she's a four-time Olympian, she's an author, and she's a businesswoman. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Anthony. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So usually I start my guests is where did they go to college? So where did you go?
I graduated from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, Tennessee, Lady Vols, many years ago.
Great. So I want to go back to your high school career. Where did you go to high school, and when did things start developing where you knew that you were getting involved with track more seriously?
Well, I am a native of New Jersey. I grew up in Newark and also South Orange and Maplewood, New Jersey. So I went to Columbia High School. And when I was in high school, as a freshman, I ran cross country, indoor and outdoor track and field. However, before getting to high school, I knew I wanted to run track and field, and I had done so at the Junior Olympic and AAU level.
Wow.
So by the time I got to high school, being 14, I was ready to go with varsity sports. And so back in that time, there weren't many sports for girls because that was right around the time Title IX was getting up and going. So track and field was something that I liked to do, and I beat all the boys doing it, so I stayed with it.
Wow. So when did you really start your career in track? Middle school or grammar school?
Actually, we didn't do middle school track and field. It didn't have that then. So I ran in a day camp called Essex County Parks Commission. And I started running when I was 8 and 7 years old in field days that we had against other parks. And then my father wanted us to run distance races because he wanted to dispel the notion that Black Americans couldn't run distance.
Wow.
So we ran the mile, 2 miles in cross country. And I started doing that when I was 10 and 11, traveling across the country and running against other kids.
Wow.
And that's where I got my mark. So by the time I got into 8th grade, I had made Junior Olympic trips. And as a freshman in high school, I was one of the best in the state already.
Already?
Yes.
So now, on colleges, did they start recruiting you as early as freshman year then?
Well, you have to remember back then it was two different groups. You had the AIEW, was for women, and the NCAA were for men. So I didn't get recruited until I was a junior. In high school, basically like it is now, but it was just different rules and regulations for men and for women. I got out of high school in 1980. So those mathematicians out there, I'm 53 years old, if you're trying to figure out this piece. But when I got out of high school, I was the top high school recruit in the country, men or women, in any sport. So Sports Illustrated did an article on me because I was the top high school recruit. And I came out of school with Patrick Ewing, Sherrod Miller, Jackie Joyner Kersey, Herschel Walker, Reggie White. All these people were in my class, but I was the #1 recruit in the country, male or female in any sport.
Wow,
and
fantastic.
I selected University of Tennessee.
Now, going back into the recruiting process, I'm assuming you got recruited by a lot of schools.
I did, yes.
So now, how does someone go through the process? What did you do to go through the process? Were your mom and dad involved in everything?
Yes.
How did it all work?
Well, again, I'm going to do what I did for me and then try and make it relevant to today's situation. When I was being recruited, the AIEW wouldn't allow your business to be paid for. So your parents had to pay for travel to the university and to put you up on campus. So it was a little different, but I did go to various colleges through track and field competitions. So I was able to visit colleges that way. As for put together a packet and all the things the kids are doing now, I was just good. So I ran 2 or 3 in high school. That was one of the best times in the world at that time. Yeah. So I was recruited a little bit differently. I did not have to put together a packet because they knew how good I was. I was the best collegiate in the country. Academically, I was sound as well. We did have to take the ACTs and the SATs as well. But as far as putting a packet together, calling colleges, I didn't do any of that because I was the best around, so they came to me. I guess what I had to do, however, was iron out and select one college out of the list of colleges that were recruiting me, and that was based upon what I wanted to major in.
Okay, so how does that process work? Well,
Right.
how do you work through that process of, I'm assuming, 1,000 colleges?
Yeah, well, I had a lot, and initially you have those that you know you're not going to go to, and then those that you may want to go to, and then you have the ones that you really want to go to. Okay. So my parents told me that we can't go to more than 5 schools because it just was an expense.
Sure.
So I picked out the top 5 that I wanted to go to based on what they did at AIW. So that was our nationals at that time. Today would be the NCAAs. I saw who they had in my event, and then looked at the majors. I was majoring in communications. Okay. So most schools have a solid enough communications program anyway. So I didn't really need to go to a school that had the best in the world. Right, but I went to a solid communications school because you had to go to grad school. I would think that would be the step. Uh-huh. So with that being said, I narrowed my selection down to UT, UVA, Georgetown, and IU, Indiana University in Bloomington. Okay. And I went to those schools on official visits, and then I met with the different coaches, and then I looked at what they had done the prior year at AIWs, which was nationals, and I looked at what the coach was bringing in. So UT said, well, I'm bringing in these girls, and we're going to win nationals our freshman year. So she showed me she was bringing in sprinters, and she was bringing in long jumpers. She had me coming in the middle distance and distance, and they already had a good girl in my event. So I selected UT based on who they were bringing in. They had a good communications department, and it was at that time, it was airlines called People's Express and New York Apple, sure. And that was only $99 round trip. So I knew I can get back home in about an hour and a half if I had to.
That's great.
Yes.
Fantastic. So it really comes down to sometimes it's just down to geographics and what the school has, and that's what you're looking for.
It could be. Now it depends. I was a full athletic scholarship student. If you don't get that, and your parents have to pay for the schooling, or if you have to get a grant or take out some student loans, you also have to look at the cost of the school. Right. But in my case, that wasn't a factor for me. Even though my freshman year, a full scholarship because of the rules were everything except books. So then my sophomore year, they combined men and women's athletics to NCAAs. So now in 1981, all the girls could get full rides, and they could all go to get visits, 5 visits a year, just like the men had gotten. And then our nationals were together. They used to be separate.
So you missed it by that 1 year.
I missed it by that 1 year, but what was it, $300 or something like that for some books, and we were on quarters. Right. So in the scheme of things, it wasn't much, but it is, if you don't have that money, it would have been a problem, even that amount of money back then.
Yeah. So now, grade-wise, what type of grades are colleges looking for at the track level? Mm-hmm.
Well, I think athletically, the grades, they want you to be able to score. Again, when I got out of school, the high SATs, you were scoring 1,600. Now it's 2,400, so it's a little different now. But the bottom line is, if you are a student athlete, there are various types. You have the student athlete that has the 2,400 on the SAT, scoring really well on ACTs, and also a 4.0. Then you have the student that's on the bottom that's get the 2.0. They may get 1,700. But they're a good student. So I was kind of in the upper half of that piece, if you look at today's standards. And I think that they're looking for a student that has solid grades, but also has the ability to work through it. Just because you don't have a 4.0 or a 3.5 in high school doesn't mean you're not going to be able to go to college, graduate, and be productive after college. So I try and tell parents to be mindful of that. And the students also. Yes, grades are very important. It does determine where you go. But I got recruited by Harvard and Stanford and those schools as well, and I wasn't the top 1% of my school. But they knew that my grades were solid enough that I would have graduated if I had chosen to go to those schools.
Right, and then the athletic piece was right there.
Right.
So you had the athletic piece and the scores that they're looking for, right. The times that they're looking for.
Exactly.
Now, what are a normal time for colleges to start looking at kids at the high school level?
Well, usually they start identifying kids as juniors because you can't really reach out until that age per the NCAA rules. Mm-hmm. So when you are a junior in high school, you start getting letters from colleges if you see them, and you put your packets together to submit to colleges and let them know that you're out there and you're interested in going to their school. You can apply for a lot of schools now just on that one application. You can apply to 6 or 7 colleges at a time. Back then, it was one application at a time.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, I didn't have to go through that process. But then I think now, however, you do have to go through that clearinghouse process at schools.
Right.
So that was something I did not have to do then, but now you have to do it no matter how good you are athletically.
So now you're at college, you're at UT. So what's the concept? Because a lot of parents out there have, well, it's all about the sport and it's not about the academics. What is your advice on that?
Well, it goes 2 ways, because if you don't have the athletic piece, and if you're a student athlete, then you're going to get your scholarship taken away, your funds taken away. If you don't have the grades, then you won't be able to compete and travel. So they work together. And depending on your sport and who you are, I always say you go to college to graduate to get money. So you have someone like, I don't know, some of the basketball and football men specifically that can possibly go pro. You know, only 1% goes professional, but there's some that go pro, right, their juniors years, They leave out. And they can make all this money. So then someone would say, well, do they stay in school and graduate from college, or do they go make these millions? So then you go back to, why do you go to college? Well, you go to college to get an education, to get the money you can live off of. So they can go professional and still get a college degree. So every situation is different. But again, that's the top 1%. The masses, however, have to be able to balance the track and field or their sport and the academic piece, knowing that now you have a lot of student centers and study sessions that are mandatory. You have all this help that we didn't particularly have when I was growing up to make sure that you do graduate. So there's really no reason why you don't graduate if you do some due diligence on your part, because they have an infrastructure out there for you to graduate. So that's why you have to pick the correct school for you. Mm-hmm. UT is a big school, about 25,000 students. So you may not be that kind of person that wants to be in a big hall of 250 kids in a psychology class in a lecture hall.
Yeah.
So you have to decide what's best for you or your child. We know how they will work better in a small city setting or in a city setting. Princeton is more of a city setting because you're right, had that main street there on 27. Rutgers is another big state school. Right. You have the city setting as well. Then you have some of the rural schools that are out there. So you have to decide on what's best for yourself.
So now, what was your schedule like at the college level? How did you balance everything?
It was a very vigorous schedule because I ran cross country, indoor and outdoor. I was a 3-time sports person. So we were on quarters at that time as well. So we had to, I never had a time to really back off and get myself together. It was always on. So it was always training and always school. So I had to really balance the training. You set your classes based on your training cycle. But as you know, as you go further on in school, your courses could be later on in the evening because you're more in your core courses. So they make concessions for that. So I didn't miss any classes because I traveled enough, and if I would get in trouble if you missed classes. We didn't have internet. We couldn't stay in that room and do stuff on the computer. You had to physically get up and go to the classes.
No cell phones.
No cell phones, none of that stuff. So it was a little different era, but the basic premise is that no matter 1980 or 2015, if you're not studying, if you're not applying yourself, you're not going to graduate no matter what type of devices that you have now.
Yeah. So what starts to happen in college where you start thinking, boy, I can actually do this at an Olympic level? Mm. What is the mindset, and when does that start happening in college?
I think when you're in college, when you start winning nationals like I was. I actually thought I made the Olympic trials in high school. Okay. I made the finals in 1980 as a senior. I took 7th, but I still made the finals. So for me, the Olympics became a reality, a dream for me as a kid. Mm-hmm. And then the more work I put in, the better I got. I started getting closer and closer to my goal. So in college, I was winning NCAAs. I was winning the SEC conferences, so I was the best in the country. Mm-hmm. So, and my times were just as fast as the other Americans in the 800 meters. So it became something that I could really do this. I could really do this if I get out of school and focus primarily on that. But one problem was back then, you couldn't make any money out of it.
Ah.
So in the East, it was Eastern Bloc countries. Remember, the war came down in 1989. So when that happened, the sport changed. But prior to that, the Americans in my event were being demolished because they were running 153, 154, and we were running 159, 2 minutes. So we're not winning any medals. We're not getting into any European meets. So after trying out for Olympic team once, most people that I came up with, they stopped. But for me, I continued because I got better and better and better. And it didn't bother me that I wasn't really beating them because I knew they were on steroids and things like that. And I got a contract. So with the contract, I was able to have a living, and then I got a job. And then I just kind of worked and I ran. But in college, I realized that probably my senior year is when I thought I could make the Olympic team.
Wow. So now it's senior year of college.
Yes.
You're noticing that you can get to the Olympics. What's that step? Because that's got to be a difficult step because you're competing against the elite of the elite out there, right?
Yes, but first you have to make the Olympic trials. You have to have a time, which I did. So once you have a time, you get invited to the Olympic trials. And once you're there, invited to the trials, then you have to compete 3 days and come in the top 3.
And where does that all happen?
Well, every 4 years it changes.
Okay.
So the last couple of 4 years, the last Olympics, they were in trials were in Eugene, Oregon.
Okay.
But when I was coming up there in '80, they were in Eugene, Oregon. Then they were in California, Indiana. So it moves around. But the bottom line is that you have to be healthy enough to make the time to be invited. And then once you get there, make the finals. And then once you're in the finals, come in the top 3. Because in my event, they only take 3 people.
Wow.
There's no relay. So in relays, you take 4 people. But in my event, only top 3 people make it.
Okay.
So in 1984, I realized I could possibly make the Olympic team. I tried out, but I didn't make it to the finals that year. And so then I really kind of buckled down and got ready for '88. And then that was my first Olympic team.
Okay. And then from '88 to 2000, I guess,
Right.
was your last?
My last, correct.
Olympics?
Yeah, I made the last, well, '88 was in Seoul, Korea. '92 was in Barcelona, Spain. '96 was in Atlanta. And 2000 was in in Sydney, Australia. And that's when my sister, myself, and my sister-in-law made the Olympic team in the same event.
Wow.
That had never been done before, and we were coached by my brother.
Wow.
So that was something special. My brother graduated from Villanova. He was a student athlete. My sister graduated from University of Florida, student athlete. And my sister-in-law graduated from Alabama A&M. So we were all student athletes, and we all graduated from college. And now, at that time, I was 38. My sister-in-law was like 30. My sister was 22.
Wow.
And we all made the team together in the same event. So I had a many years in the 800. That's like 16, 20 years on top of your game.
Sure.
Because the Olympics come every 4 years, as you know.
Yeah. So now, how do you support yourself throughout all of that time?
Well, the first 2 years, Olympic periods, I had a job. I was a state investigator. I worked for the Attorney General's office in the drug division. Oh. So I did that for 2.5, 3 years, along with a Nike contract that I had. And then when the war came down in '89, all of a sudden my 158 is like one of the best times in the world because those women running 153 are now running 157, 158, and now I can compete. So being ranked top 10 in the world was a breakthrough for me. And also I got contracts, Foot Locker, Ray-Ban, Nike. I started getting contracts. More sponsors. I started running faster, hitting all my bonuses. Wow. And then I quit my job in the Attorney General's office and then just pursued track and field full time. So
now, the Olympics is over, and yes. I guess you became a businesswoman and an author. Yes. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the Olympics were over for me in 2000, but prior to that, I had a business called Joetta Sports and Beyond, and I would go and speak to different students across New Jersey about my plights and about my successes and doing assembly programs. So I knew that I wanted to do that, and then I did that for a little while from 1992 actually until currently. But then I started a foundation called the Joetta Clark Diggs Sports Foundation, which focuses on nutrition, lifestyle skills, and obesity in kids K through 12. So it's been around now for 14 years. Wow. And we just go in and we are the gym program in various schools across New Jersey, and now we're moving into PA and also Texas. So with that being said, I was able to make the transition as a motivational speaker, as an executive director of my foundation, and also as a businesswoman and author. And I think that track and field enabled me to do that. My book is called Joetta's P Principles for Success, Life Lessons Learned Through Track and Field. It talks about what you need to be successful in sports and also in life, and how they work together. And I'm called on by many colleges and corporations to speak to their students about the book, and also about how one stays focused, how you make the transition, and more importantly, how you maximize your skill sets.
So how did you do that? How did you make the transition and the goals that you set for yourself?
Well, I made the transition because I knew that there was going to be a time when I couldn't run. So I needed to make sure that I was investing my money as I was running, and also I wanted to make sure that I had a career path, a career idea. And I knew that I did not want to work for anybody else. And my name was big enough that people recognized it, so I tried to take advantage of what I had created, my brand. And from there, I just continued to grow and grow and grow and move on. It took a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of energy to have your own business, aligning yourself with the right people to make your brand look good, and your services make them available to people. So that's how I did that. And academically, what I'm majoring in, what I'm doing now was kind of like my major, but it's been so many years that I've been out of school, I've gotten life lessons that are also a value to me in what I'm doing now.
So tell me a little bit about the foundation and what you're actually doing with the foundation.
Well, the foundation, I'm so excited about it because it's my passion. And I mentioned that we go into school districts with the gym program, and we provide free programs or discounted programs depending on your district. And we get grants from Horizon and J Health, Johnson & Johnson, Aetna Insurance, we've gotten from United Healthcare, Sanofi. So we've gotten grants from many organizations to go in and be the gym program in these school districts. And we teach them life skills, nutrition, how to deal with obesity. And the goal is for them to be the champion of their lives. Not the Olympic champion, that's for a select few, but be the champion of your life. Eat well, get your rest, do well academically. Our motto is strong mind, strong body equals a strong future. So we have to make sure that we are feeding that to our young kids. And we also have a program called Cisco, Students Interested in Sports Career Opportunities. So you're not the athlete, you're you. You are the reporter, you're the doctor, you're the nutritionist, you're the person that's helping this billion-dollar industry stay afloat.
Wow, that's fantastic stuff you got going on. So how do you keep yourself in shape? Do you still run and do that?
Well, Anthony, my personality is that I do a little jogging, but I ran at such a high level for so many years. I do not do the road races and things like that. And when I start training a little bit, I try and get wired, and then I'm like, well, maybe I should do some master competition. So I try not to go to that level. My goal is to continue to beat my daughter, which is she's 12 years old, and and that's coming to an end really soon, me beating her. But I stay healthy by doing some programs with my kids, and I call all these my kids, at all different schools I'm in, and also eating well. I had to adjust my eating. Since I'm no longer burning off thousands of calories, I can no longer eat in thousands of calories. So I had to make that adjustment, and I did that just fine.
So now, you said you have a daughter, so is your daughter going into track? Is that something that's enticing to her?
My daughter won the Hershey Invitational last year in the standing broad jump, and she has talent. Right now she likes basketball, ice skating, golf. I think that because I'm a four-time Olympian, her aunts are 5 and 4-time Olympians, and she's around it right now. She's shying away from track and field. But she has the athletic ability, and then she's also a very good student. So she has all the combinations that are needed to be successful. And you have parents that are behind her, making sure she's being rested and learning and traveling and getting a feel for the different events, so she can find out what sport she likes the best.
So a future Olympian or a future college athlete?
I would say so. I
Good.
would say so.
Good. So. One of the things that I want to find out is all encompassing. You have so much going on in your life. How do you keep track of everything?
That's a good question. How do I keep track? Well, believe it or not, I still like to write things down, even though we have all these modern technologies. I'm a paper and pencil person, so I have a good calendar. But the reality is, everything is separate, even though it runs congruently. You know, you have the foundation, you have the book, you have the speaking, and they are separate entities under the brand of Joetta Clark Diggs. So with that said, I have a good team that works with me for my extravaganza and events like that. And then I just make sure that that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do to make sure people want my services. And I have some people that help me to get events agents and that book different things for me.
Great.
And then they ask me, am I available for this date? And I say yes or no. And then we book the events.
Fantastic. So we're coming to the end of our show.
Okay.
And usually what I ask my guests is, what advice do you want to give to the families out there that have sons or daughters that are in high school, that their aspirations is to go to college and to run track at the college level? What advice do you give to that family?
Well, the first thing I would say to the family members, and again, there are different dynamics in each family. Some kids are doing it because their parents want them to do it. Some kids want to do it. You have to find out and give the kid the freedom to be themselves. And once you do that, then the child is able to really maximize their skill sets. I think you have to, one, know your child and they have to know themselves. Find out what they want to major in. Find out if they work better in a big school or small school. And then once you do that, put together a package so that you can go out and let these colleges know that your kid exists.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming to the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you. It was nice being here and having back again sometime.
Great, no problem. So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.